I had the opportunity to sit down with Susanna Spiccia, the executive director and founder of Reimagine Atlanta, and my internship supervisor for the summer. Here are some snippets from our conversation.
Reimagine is really about empowering and building up the next generation of content creators in Atlanta. So we really focus on video production. It's kind of our primary means. But when we create a project, our goal is to really bring kids together from all different backgrounds. So we work with various nonprofits around Atlanta who work with different populations of kids, refugee, homeless population, kids who are in all kinds of transitions. And then we're also working with private and public schools. So trying to just bridge that gap and help kids meet other kids who they normally wouldn't hang out with. And then we make something fun, like a music video.
Right. So how did Reimagine Atlanta get started?
So I started it in March of 2014, but I've been wanting to do this since I was 17. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I just knew that I was always going to help kids. It was kind of my only thing I had going. And I wanted to use the arts to do it, but I didn't know how to do it at all. I was a nanny for 2 years, almost 2 years, and I was a farmer, and I had an after-school program in Section 8 housing. I did that for 6 years. I ran a program. It was like an after-school program. And then I was in outside sales, and I traveled, and I sold to nuclear plants. But everything was just kind of preparing me for what I ended up launching. I was realizing as I'm working in all these different fields and talking to different people, there's so much disconnect. I grew up in the suburbs of Atlanta, and where I grew up, I just never interacted with kids that were not white and from the same background, mostly affluent backgrounds. And I just didn't have much opportunity. And yet, I was living in the city, Atlanta, which is super international and has so much diversity. And so over the years, I just was seeing, these silos that exist in Bankhead or Buckhead or in the refugee communities. There's just lots of silos. So how do we bridge this gap was always the question, is how do I bring people together, especially kids? And then ended up, I was in outside sales, I guess that was 2 years before I started it. And my goal was make as much money as possible so I can help fund this nonprofit that's probably not going to make much money. And so I did. I saved up a bunch of money, and I worked really hard for those 2 years. And while I was doing that, I decided that I wanted to focus more on film. And the more that when we launched our projects and the more we got into them, I realized there's a huge voice missing in the film industry. So you have in television and film and documentary and the media, anybody behind a camera, and you've heard me say this before, but anyone behind a camera, producing, writing, editing, directing, almost 87% is a white male. As I was starting Reimagine and learning about this, realized we have this opportunity, since we're working with all these different kids, to bring them together and to give them a voice so that they can become the content creators and help change some of those dynamics.
Reimagine's a nonprofit, and you mentioned working in sales. So how is it different now that you're working with nonprofit versus when you were working with just another business?
That's a great question. It's all sales. Everything is the same. I worked for a greedy company. They really just wanted to make money, and that's understandable. And as a nonprofit, obviously we're not trying to just make money. We're a nonprofit, but you still have to have earned revenue. You still have to make some money in order to survive, whether that's asking people for corporate sponsorships or writing grants or coming up with a business model where you're selling your services or making money from them. So I'm so glad that I did sales, because as hard as it was, it taught me how to keep pushing. If I didn't meet my number, I could get fired, my old job. So it's
right.
You have to sell this amount or you're gonna get fired. Now, if I don't meet our budget goal, then I can't pay my staff. Or, we can't do the programs we want, and these kids aren't going to be able to be taken care of. So it's the same thing. I'm still selling all the time.
So what are kind of some of the struggles of running a nonprofit, if you can?
There's so many struggles, girl. Do not start a nonprofit. I mean, seriously, like, if you're going to start a nonprofit, I would advise you to get a business advisor and get a business degree, because I did that. I'm so glad I did. I did marketing. It's all the same stuff, but I was telling you earlier, it's a bigger challenge as a nonprofit because you're serving usually people who can't afford your services, but you still have to make money somehow. So like you're like double slammed. The challenges are, getting everything in line by just being an official nonprofit. When you file for your 501c3 status, get somebody to help you who really knows how to do it. There's this thing called a 1022. It's a fast track. It's awesome. We got our status in 45 days, and we paid like significantly less than like doing a legal Zoom where they file for it. It's expensive. Sometimes it gets set up. You have to get a board in line, and then when you get a board, you have to like do all this other stuff, like manage a board and make sure that you're accountable to a million things. Like the budget, fundraising are the two big ones, but there's all this like legal stuff too.
Right.
And honestly, I just have a lot of mentors around me constantly because I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I've been doing this for a little over 2 years, and I'm just like, oh. Yeah. But it's because of my mentors that I've been able to accomplish. Like, Reimagine's grown really well and fast, a little too fast. But we've been able to do it because of all the advisors that have helped and like stepped in. So I'll say, hey, I need help on accounting. And then I'll have my accounting person. I need help on business strategy. Have that person. I need help on fundraising strategy. Have that person. Like, that's one of the best things to do is like pick your people, and then whoever your board chair is, so who's in charge of your board of directors, have it like the person who, one, can get people to do stuff and has a lot of experience, and two, just totally has your back and will pick up the phone anytime you call.
As a nonprofit, you have to have like a bazillion connections to do anything. So what kind of like are the big name connections that Reimagine has?
So I want to clarify before I say my big name connections. I had no, and I literally mean no connections when I started. I went on LinkedIn and I sent people random creepy messages. Hey, professor, can I come talk to you about your department and what you do? I really just want to ask you questions. I'm starting this thing and I just want to ask you some questions. So now people who we work with, Turner, and then we work, MailChimp is one of the email marketing company, our favorites. We love them. The Arthur Blank Foundation is one of our big backers now. And that took a couple years to cultivate that relationship. And then one day they just called us and said, hey, apply for this grant. So great. Six Man, who does the music festivals at sea. There's a lot. Oh, Spitfire Studios, Mass Collective. Mass is a big maker space in town, and like table saws and all kinds of stuff. And then Spitfire is like a film production studio.
So I know that this company you mentioned, at least to me, was like your dream. Is there a moment or a series of moments in which like you worked with a kid and you said, all right, that is why I'm here?
Constantly.
All the time.
Like, I would not be doing this if I didn't have the connections to the kids. There are some kids who were deemed by teachers not kids that weren't going to go anywhere in life, or they had a really bad attitude, or they're so depressed that they're suicidal and they don't care about anything, and then they find purpose behind the camera. Or we also do music production, so they found purpose in creating a song, and then they're able to express themselves. Or the other thing for me that really captures is when a kid from a totally different background from another kid that you would never expect them to become friends, and they become friends. And they like get each other's numbers and hang out. That's cool. That to me is winning. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's all I've got for you.
Okay.
Yay, thank you.
Awesome.